So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Center for Retail Research at Lund University. Great to see so many participants here today on this webinar, which is the first part on a series on future themes in consumption. And the first seminar, today's seminar, is on the theme sustainability. As you all know, climate change is the defining crisis of our time, and it's happening even faster than we feared. The climate crisis is reshaping retail. Retailer must embrace more sustainable ways to do business as we live in increasingly resource-constrained world. And we need to move from a linear to a circular model. Government support is crucial to make this change. However, a key component in this challenge is that how will we in the future consume products and services? And that is one of the questions we pose today. How will consumption develop in the forthcoming years? What will consumers think of when they think of consumption? How will retail experience look? How will retail experience sound and feel? These are some of the questions that we pose today, and that are posed in this in retail industry, I would say. Undoubtedly, we have an interesting seminar here the following time, and that I think should be even taken more seriously than only a seminar. So it's something that many of us are thinking of on a daily basis as consumers, but also as in research or in retail business. I will share some slides. So what is Center for Retail Research at Lund University? It's an interdisciplinary center of excellence in retail research with active researchers from a range of disciplines. So it's not only one faculty, it's many faculties from Lund University. So it's including ethnology, it's engineering, it's business, it's marketing, it's management, and many fields. You can see on the slide here, 6 researchers that is taking lead in this center. But remember, the most important part of this center is the more than 50 affiliated researchers that we have at Lund University in this field. I want to take the opportunity also to check out our webpage and especially look at the forthcoming events. For example, we have an event tomorrow where we have excellent researchers having a seminar on warehousing and logistics in retail. So join that also if you can, if you have the time for that. So the agenda for today looks like this. I think you have looked at it before, let's Carey, you will begin. You have 20 minutes. And Carys is a postdoctoral researcher at the center. And then we have Mariana Lopez. I think you're here. Hi. She's from International Institute of Industrial Environment and Economics. Okay, and then we have a coffee break. Then we have Réka will discuss her research. And then we will have also Kevin from Nudie. Really nice to have Nudie here speaking today. And then we will have a panel discussion and then we'll sum up in the end. So some code of conduct before we continue is that I can stop sharing. Some code of conduct is please take questions after presentation. You can use raise your hand or you can use the chat to post questions. But also remember you have a possibility to raise questions in the very end in a panel discussion. I then give the word to Carys and look forward to a fruitful discussion on the topic. I say hi again, and the floor is yours, Carys.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for that lovely introduction. Yeah, I am going to now, I was going to say we're ahead of schedule, which is fantastic. That hardly ever happens with these webinars, but I'm sure these 2 minutes we're ahead is now going to be used up by me fiddling about with sharing screen and asking if you can see the screen and all of those things. So let me just fiddle around here. Here is the presentation. Hope you can see that now.
Looks good.
Looks good. Now I have to also find some notes here and so on, make sure I can see everything. Great. Okay. I'm also going to start my stopwatch to make sure I keep the time. So as Daniel said, my name is Carys Egan-Wyer, and today I'm going to present on anti-consumption trends. Yes, slides are working. All is good with the world. So, yeah, just a bit of background. I am both a consumer culture researcher and more recently also an anti-consumption researcher. And to kind of flip it back a bit and give you some background on that, 10 years ago, a friend of mine pledged to stop unnecessary consumption for a year. And at that time, that was kind of unheard of. People thought this was a really, really odd thing to do. About 3 years ago, I did the same thing. I promised to stop shopping for a year. And while that was still quite odd, it seemed like it kind of resonated with people a bit more. It seemed to be a bit more understood. And as part of that pledge, this anti-consumption pledge, stop shopping pledge, I kind of started engaging with anti-consumption trends in social media. And I realized that there was quite kind of a lot of this anti-consumption sentiment going on kind of under the surface. So I started to notice that there was kind of increased awareness of the problems and the negative externalities that are associated with excessive consumption, such as waste and pollution, deforestation, and global heating, etc. And people were starting to reject, perhaps, or question this idea that consumption is the kind of solution to all our problems. That kind of idea is prevalent in consumer culture, but there was a kind of idea that and that consumption might be perhaps the root of a lot of our problems rather than the solution. So I started to get very interested in that from a research perspective. And if we fast forward again a few more years, we're starting to see now that anti-consumption is beginning to go mainstream. We see Jane Fonda re-wearing her red carpet dresses and promising never to buy new clothes again publicly. We see David Attenborough on Netflix specials condemning overconsumption as one of the biggest threats to our existence on this planet. And TV shows like Marie Kondo's a show about minimalist living becoming kind of primetime viewing. So what I'm saying is that I think this anti-consumption trend is moving mainstream, and that has ramifications for retailers, especially those retailers who focus on high volume sales as their kind of main business model. So I think retailers need to better understand anti-consumption in order to respond to it. And instead of offering kind of sustainable products that consumers have to adjust their lifestyles or their preferences to fit into, if we understand this kind of anti-consumption trend better, retailers can actually offer consumers things that they want to fit into these anti-consumption lifestyles. So happily, Handelsrådet thought very much like me, and they gave me some funding to do 2 years research into these anti-consumption trends from a consumer perspective. And because consumption is very complex, and it's kind of intrinsically linked with our social lives, our identities, and our relationships. I decided to take a socio-cultural approach to researching this anti-consumption phenomenon. So I did in-depth research interviews with a variety of anti-consumers about how they practice anti-consumption and why they do that and what it means to them. And while I'm still at very early stages of this project, I'm going to try to present some of the initial findings today. So, yeah, my findings indicate that there are kind of 3 broad sub-trends that sit under this anti-consumption umbrella, if you want to call it that, within this anti-consumption trend. So I'm going to talk about those, and I'll actually also talk about the initial findings that kind of suggest or give some clues for how retailers can respond to these trends. Hopefully, if I talk fast enough, there'll be a short time for questions at the end before we move on as well. So as I already said, my findings suggest that there are 3 broad trends within the anti-consumption trend, and those are not necessarily discrete trends. They kind of overlap and spill into each other, and sometimes some of the same values appear in all of these trends. But I think it's worth looking at them one at a time and trying to understand them from a consumer perspective. That's what we'll do. The first is non-consumption. So non-consumers really focus on buying less stuff. The kind of motivation behind non-consumption is sustainability. It's environmental as well as ethical sustainability. So by that, I mean that people who are practicing non-consumption are concerned about the kind of environmental like their footprint on the planet, their impact on the planet, as well as their impact on the people, planet's people. So they're concerned about ethical supply chains and who makes the products and what kind of life they have. People who are interested in non-consumption also tend to be interested in circular economic models or circular business models, meaning that they're interested in buying secondhand or upcycled or recycled products that don't require exploitation of new resources to make them. And there's also an emphasis on slow fashion. And I think that comes from the fact that fast fashion tends to be the poster child for overconsumption at the moment. So in order to kind of respond to that, this slow fashion movement where people focus on using what they have in interesting or innovative ways, and it kind of becomes important for non-consumers. So I have a nice quote here from a non-consumer called Kat, who I spoke to. And she talked about how she's always loved style, always loved fashion, but that she hadn't really been conscious about her shopping until a few years ago when the Rana Plaza disaster happened. And then it was a real wake-up call for Kat. She looked in her wardrobe and looked at the labels on her clothes and really considered that she's been purchasing these brands or these products that have been made by these people who may now actually be dead because of her purchasing. So Kat stopped shopping anything new after Rana Plaza. She kind of did this thing she calls shopping her wardrobe, which ties in with this slow fashion, using what you already have. And she only bought secondhand things. Okay, then we have the second kind of sub-trend that sits within this anti-consumption trend, and that is minimalism. And minimalism is all about owning less. So minimalists really try to have very curated collections of belongings. They're very careful about what they own. They tend to value quality items that will last. So when they buy stuff, it's really kind of precious and important to them. And there's this big emphasis on time within the minimalism movement. So when minimalists buy things, they talk about that those things that you buy used to be money, and that money used to be time, because you went to work to kind of, you spent your time making this money, which you now use to buy things. There's also an emphasis on the time that it takes you to own things, the kind of the effort you have to put into owning things. So there's another, oops, I need to go back one. There's a nice quote here from Sam, who's an aspiring minimalist. And Sam really talked about, he kind of went off on a rant about nutcrackers and how it's absolutely bonkers that we own nutcrackers, considering how little we actually use a nutcracker. And this for him was a kind of symbol of consumerism gone mad, and how he talked a lot there about how owning things actually makes your life harder a lot of the time, rather than making them easier, which is what consumer culture kind of promises us. There's a promise that life will be better if we have more things. That's minimalism. And then the third kind of broad trend that sits within this anti-consumption trend is the trend for zero waste. And zero waste is really about disposing of less or throwing away less. So people who try to live zero waste are motivated by sustainability again, but this time it's more about environmental sustainability. So that how is our waste impacting the planet? They like to, or they tend to focus on things that are not disposable. So replacing disposable things with non-disposable things, such as reusable coffee cups, reusable shopping bags, and so on. And then you also, again, have a focus on kind of quality items. So when they do buy things, they want them to last. And they may also, there's a tendency to try to shop at bulk food stores or bulk stores where you can bring your own packaging and refill them. So that's a way to reduce waste in the form of packaging. So we have a quote here from Charlene, who tries to live a zero waste lifestyle. And Charlene talks about how she took photos of her trash every day, the things that she was going to throw away at the end of the day, she took photos of, and how that kind of action really raised her awareness and made her focus on this aspect of life that we usually don't think about at all. We just dispose of things and we never think about where they go, or rarely. So by kind of creating her awareness or lifting her awareness, she also started to adapt her practices in the way she shopped and the way she lived. So I kind of come up with a heuristic that can help us visualize how these anti-consumption sub-trends overlap with each other and how they fit together. And as I said, there are overlaps and there are different values that come up in each of them. But a key theme you see in the middle there to all of them is this idea of less. So zero waste people want to waste less, minimalists want to own less, and non-consumers want to buy less. And that, I guess, is a concept that might be kind of a bit frightening for retailers, especially the retailers whose business model is based on volume. But I think it's important to note that anti-consumers don't stop shopping entirely. They just shop in different ways. So kind of by talking to them, I've got some clues about what they want to shop and how they want to shop. And I think that retailers can kind of, if they understand that, they can take advantage of that without necessarily promoting overconsumption. So that's what we'll talk about now in the second half of the presentation, implications for retailers. So when anti-consumers do buy, they typically want to buy quality items that will last them a long time. And that we see in Kat's quote, where she talks about it's not about quantity anymore, it's about quality when I buy. So emphasizing product quality, I think, is therefore a really good way to appeal to anti-consumers. Emphasizing how a product can be resold or handed on and have many lives is really something that's interesting. Showing how a product can be part of a circular economy is a really good tactic. And kind of starting showing people the circular pathways for the products they buy is also likely to be a good strategy. For example, in this Recycle Friday campaign that went out on Black Friday, this company did a really good job of showing customers how and where they can kind of resell their products. And so you build this idea that the product is going to last for many lifetimes by doing that. When anti-consumers do buy, they often choose secondhand first. And that's highlighted in this quote from Tara, when she talks about loving secondhand shopping. And I think for retailers, that means that retailers don't only have, it's not only about building or showing the circular pathways for products by like showing customers where they can resell things. Retailers can actually also own those circular pathways by selling products more than once in secondhand stores or secondhand rails within the standard stores, or maybe by opening up secondhand platforms. And I think Selfie is a good example here of a company that's doing, a retailer that's doing that. And also Zalando has started doing this kind of Zalando circle where they offer a platform there for reselling, and they kind of take the products back and own those pathways. Even when anti-consumers don't want to buy, they might still need access to stuff. So this quote from Sam here emphasizes, he's talking about tools, but he talks about that you don't have to own them, you just have to be able to get them, you just have to be able to rent them or whatever it is. So I think access-based consumption is actually preferable to ownership of many anti-consumers, especially minimalists who are really careful about what they're owning in their house, and people who don't want to buy things. And that opens up for quite a lot of new business models that provide access rather than selling things. They could be rental services, they could be subscription-based access models, such as some of the kind of wardrobe subscriptions that you can get now. Or they might even be like platforms for peer-to-peer sharing, like Behaviour. They do a really nice job with that. And then finally, when anti-consumers do buy and own something, what's popped up in my kind of research is that they want to keep owning it. If it breaks, they will spend time and money fixing it. And Ava kind of highlights this in her quote, where she talks about we can't recycle everything. So this is really key, being able to repair products and exchange parts or get new parts for products is really important. So repair services aren't unproblematic, especially in Sweden at the moment. And that's something we're going to hear a lot more about from the other presenters today. But I think repair services are something that retailers can consider offering alongside their more traditional offerings, not only as a service that they can monetize, but also as a way to signal to anti-consumers that they kind of have the same values, and this might be somewhere that they want to shop. So I want to try and save a little bit of time in case there are any questions. So I'll sum up now. And basically, what I've been trying to say today is that anti-consumption, I think, is starting to become more mainstream. And that my findings so far suggest that there are these three sub-trends within the anti-consumption trend, which are non-consumption, minimalism, and zero waste. And less is a central theme in all of those sub-trends, but that kind of idea of less can also be an opportunity as well as a challenge for retailers. So even if this anti-consumption trend continues to grow, there's still opportunities here. And retailers can appeal to anti-consumers by emphasizing quality, by selling products more than once, by selling access rather than ownership, and potentially by offering repair services as well. So I think that's all from me for now. I could maybe have a couple of minutes where I can take if there are any burning questions or anything that needs to be clarified before we move on.
Thank you, Carys. So do we have any questions? Carrie, can you stop sharing so I can see all I have us. Yeah, here we are. And I see Cecilia is waving her hand desperately to get, she have questions, or?
Yes.
Yes,
Thank
go
you.
for it.
Yeah. Thank you, Carys. Nice to hear about your new project. And yeah, I've done some research on this topic myself. And I have two questions. Maybe the second one is more relevant for you, but the first one is, I think that some kind of a historical perspective, is it fair to say that this is a new movement? I think it's a social movement, okay, when it comes to sustainability, but if you go back in history, you can see that this moral discussion has been coming back again and again. So I think that's very interesting to follow this kind of discourse. And the second one is, I know you are focusing on those consumers and those trends. So I am curious about if you are going to continue with the retailers and how do they cater for this kind of new demand, and will you continue with them? So that was a question.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think your point about kind of historical perspective is really valid. And I think maybe when we think about anti-consumption as a trend, I think that's really important to give it some perspective, because of course, if you look back more than 50 or 60 years, the trend is absolutely not for consumer culture and fast fashion. The ongoing trend forever has been sustainability, otherwise we wouldn't be here. And this kind of fast fashion, disposable society, that is the kind of trend. And with any luck, we're getting over that trend. So this trend for anti-consumption can really be seen maybe as an end of a trend for disposable fast fashion culture. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my idea of the kind of historical perspective there, that this is a blip that we're now coming out of, hopefully. And then also a great question about the retailers. I haven't got there yet. Like I said, this is just the beginning of the study, but the idea is absolutely to do some observations with alternative consumption spaces, so retailers that are operating more circular business models, and kind of picking up some that are already operating some of these models for more sustainable anti-consumption kind of shopping. So that's the plan, to go and observe there and see what are they doing and how does those interactions take place, and what is really happening in those spaces.
Thank you. Time is ticking. We have one more question. Do we have one more question? Thank you for saving all the questions to the panel debate in the end. But okay, thank you, Carys. Let's move on to Mariana. You're here.
Yes, I'm here.
And let's share, and very interested in getting your insights into your research. So welcome.
Thank you. Would you mind enabling me to share my screen so I can do so?
Now you should be able to. Sorry for that.
No problem. Okay, let's see. Can you all see my screen? Yes?
Looks good.
Perfect. So good morning, everyone. It's really great to have the space to talk about futures of consumers and retail. So this morning, I would share with you some consumer insights into repairing, but I will be using electronics as a case study. So I will start by giving you some context about repair and about electronics, and then I'll introduce some of my select findings and conclusions and recommendations from my research. To begin with, you may be wondering, why should retailers and manufacturers care about repair? Why should we be thinking about repair? Well, the answer is that repair is coming back, and it really is here to stay. We are seeing both push and pull working together to transition our societies for being throwaway centric, becoming circular repair futures. The push we are seeing from the European Union, but also from national governments that have openly acknowledged that repair is a key strategy to meet environmental goals. We're seeing increasing number of legislations to try to facilitate repair. One example is the Eco Design Directive that's requiring access and availability of information, spare parts, but also software updates to be available for 7 to 10 years after the last product has been placed on the market. We're also seeing a push for repair from national governments. An example is the French Repairability Index, which is fresh as well, very new. And this one is calling for mandatory display of clear information for consumers on repairability, specifically of electronics. And in the case of Sweden, we're seeing tax incentives for repair. So the push is happening. At the same time, pull measures, or the pull is coming from consumers and from business. When it comes to consumers, we're seeing two main trends. We're seeing an increased demand for durable and repairable products. As Carys mentioned, people want to consume better, and durability and repairability is central to consuming better. But at the same time, we're also seeing repair talked about as a way to return to a lifestyle of caring, as a way to make our societies more resilient, more self-sufficient, right? This mending mindset. It's becoming to, we are hearing more and more and more, it's permeating. And examples of this is the repair show, which has not only been super popular, but the reviews would say this is the most wholesome show I've seen in a long time. So we're seeing it really become a topic of conversation. And we're also seeing activism such as the right to repair that is really pushing this topic front and center. At the same time, we're seeing a surge of businesses such as Fairphone, ShiftPhone, and Nudie Jeans that is here today. They're capturing the value of offering durable and repairable products. So they're making it clear that there is a business case. So altogether, whether it's, the question is not whether repair is happening, it's, one business are going to tag along and be part of this momentum that is really strongly pushing towards making it a reality. However, as everything, there are lots of barriers to really make repair the status quo, the to-go option when it comes to the way we consume. We are seeing, you can think about these barriers as facilitating conditions that may not be there, right? What's the context? We have issues with access, with legal frameworks, with warranties, etc. There are social factors that may not be favoring repair, and individual factors that may not be favoring repair. And these barriers is what I will talk to you about today, but from a consumer point of view. So what do consumers think are the facilitating conditions, the social factors, the individual factors that could make repair a reality? But before I do this, let me just quickly walk you through why electronics. So I kind of put that aside for a moment. So some of you may be aware of this, but Swedes rank amongst the top 6 consumers of electronic products and among the top 5 producers of electronic waste in the world. This is alarming because environmental impact of electronic products is really high. But just to give you a sense of how high, there was this really interesting study that quantified the environmental impacts of 71 product groups in Sweden that revealed that electronic products are actually a hotspot product that is responsible for between 14 up 58% of the total environmental impact on all categories. So it is a big problem. Now, when we look closer at the consumer electronics or personal electronics, and by this you can think of your phones, your headphones, your smartwatches, your TVs, your computers, your cameras, so basically anything that is not a kitchen or a very large appliance, we already know that the bulk of the environmental impact of this personal electronics is happening during the resource extraction and the production phase. If we take a smartphone, we know that up to 80% of the greenhouse gas emissions are happening during the production phase. Because these impacts are happening at these early stages, a common sense strategy to decrease this is to extend the life of electronics, frankly, as long as possible. And this is when repair becomes very, very relevant, because it's definitely a way to extend the life of these electronics. Okay, so now having really quickly talk about this, as we know, by the way, this push for repair is definitely happening in legislation, right? So let's look what are the barriers from a consumer perspective. And I will start walking you through the individual barriers, then talk about social, and then at the end, kind of the context, the contextual barriers. When it comes to individual barriers, the participants I interviewed and I surveyed had very mixed attitudes towards repairing electronics. On one hand, they said, repair is great because it protects the environment, it benefits the economy, and it's just really a good idea. But actually, it's not so great because it's complicated, it's time-consuming, and it's expensive. This revealed that there is a conflict where individuals were acknowledging there were environmental and social benefits, but they didn't think they were at the same level with individual benefits. When it came to emotions or effects, the story was mostly this one. People would say, my electronic device breaks and I am bummed out, I'm sad. If I broke it, I feel very angry at myself. When I'm trying to figure out how and where to get a repair, it's frustrating, it's uncertain. Like, where do you find a repair shop? It was just a very confusing experience. When they finally figured out those that did where to repair it, while they were waiting to get to their device back, they were feeling stressed and they were anxious. I heard many times things like, who realistically can live without their phone for more than 3 days? Or like, I cannot operate without my Bluetooth headphones, whatever. So it was very stressful just to wait to get your device repaired. However, once they got their device repaired, people felt satisfied, they were proud. They talked about how they did such a good thing, their device works so well, and it was great, and they will do it again. When it came to habits, I learned that most of the interviews, so 84%, a large number, and about over half, 58% of the questionnaire respondents, they said that they remember that when they were growing up, their parents always tried to repair something that broke. But interestingly, if you fast forward to their current lives, majority of the people I interviewed, so 58%, said, yeah, I don't really try to repair things when they break. I just kind of default to buying either a secondhand or new. This was different with the people that responded to the questionnaire, because most of them, and if you see, it's basically the same number of people that said, I remember my parents tried to repair, they were also saying, and I still do try to repair today. So very mixed experiences here. When it comes to social factors, the picture was very, very clear. In Sweden, if your personal device breaks, the normal thing to do is to replace it. It's really not to repair it. When I try to dig deeper into why, I got two explanations coming up frequently. The first one said that the current paradigm of consumption in Sweden just does not favor repair behavior. Instead, the current paradigm of consumption has established a norm to throw away, or to split out slang, and probably didn't pronounce that correctly. And so because of that, it's just become widely acceptable to throw things away and to replace. You don't feel you're expected. You don't feel you must try to repair. The other explanation is that outcomes of repair are uncertain. And I heard that on average, Swedes don't like uncertainty. I heard that, repair is just too many unknowns. First of all, you don't even know where to go. You don't know how much it would cost. Maybe you have to pay just to see if it can be repaired. If it gets repaired, would it last? Like, just too many unknowns. In contrast, when you're buying new, you know exactly what you're getting. You know how much it will cost. You know when it will arrive, etc., etc. And suites apparently would prefer that. When it comes to facilitating conditions, I asked people, what would need to happen for you to make repair your default, for you to always just not even think about it, you repair? And I got a really interesting wish list, honestly, and I divided it into context and cultural factors. When it came to these contextual factors, what people told me is that they want repair to be as easy and convenient as buying new. They wanted it to be all done online, very smooth, very easy. They wanted repair technicians to be very friendly and very excited that they chose to repair. They wanted costs to be transparent, and if possible, please lower than buying a new device. I also heard they wanted better warranties. They wanted information about repairability. Many people told me, to be honest, I don't even know if this could be a repair, so I don't bother. But if I knew it could be a repair, maybe I would try. When it comes to cultural factors, I heard over and over again, you know, it would be great to have a public debate on the impacts of electronics, but also on the benefits of repair. Many people said this is just something I hadn't thought about at all. So it would be great to have this debate more open, more public. I also heard that they wanted repair to be encouraged by actors in the same way people are encouraged today to bring their bags to the supermarket or to choose a train over a plane. The younger crowd specifically told me they wanted repair to be trendier. A few people will tell me, well, I'm a trend follower, so if it was a trend, it'll be cool, and I'll be like, I'm more interested to look into it. I also heard that they want their friends to be repairing, and for many reasons, right? They want to talk about it with others, but they also want to get their recommendations of, you know, the good repair shops or the good products, etc. So as you can see, a pretty ambitious wish list of how to make repair a reality. What does this all really mean? I think the first obvious conclusion is that the current norms do not favor repair behavior. How can businesses and retail and manufacturers help? Well, if you remember actually on that first slide, people are acknowledging the social and environmental benefits of repair. So they may not be a lot that you need to do there. That's already understood. But what's happening is that people are not seeing repair as valuable for them today. Here is where businesses can help, but really trying to make repair more valuable. How can you do this? Well, if your business offers repair, make sure that, you know, the level of service matches that of buying new. To make it convenient, make it easy, you know, provide prepaid shipping labels, you know, spare devices. There's so many ways in which businesses are good at making it easy to shop. Let's also make it very easy to repair. Second conclusion is, well, this existing perception that repair is complicated, time-consuming, and expensive is really not encouraging repair behavior. So I just mixed my conclusions. So here is where, in order to increase individual value of repair, you want to make repair easier. You want to make people feel like repair is something that's worth their money. But going back here, that I got confused. In order to make repair the norm, one way of doing this is, if you offer a warranty, make sure it prioritizes repair over replacing. That's a way to create this new default that normalizes it. Oh, my device breaks, I don't even question it. I know that they're going to try to repair it. That makes it forward. The third conclusion is that repair is a habitual behavior. And I didn't dive much on this during my findings, but this became pretty evident that people were doing what they're used to doing. So what businesses can do is contribute to building this repair habit. How? There's many ways, but one is to leverage already shopping habits. So if people are going to your website to shop, then make repair very visible on your website. So when they go in, they're seeing both shop and repair. And you're providing these associations and these cues to help people make these relationships that would eventually encourage this habit of repair. The last one is that context is really important, and there's still a lot of infrastructure that needs to be developed to make repair normalized. And I think the best way in which businesses can help is to make sure that whatever they're putting out in the market is durable and is repairable. So I will stop here, thinking that probably I'm about time. But I would love to hear your thoughts, whether it's here or later in the panel. If you're a consumer, does this resonate with you? And if you work for a business or in retail or you're a manufacturer, are your products designed to be repaired? Do you offer repair services? Or what barriers have you faced? Do you have any insights? I would just love to hear from everyone. And I'm also particularly interested to see the conversation later with Nudie and see if any of this resonates, although it's not electronics, but it'll be interesting to see if there are any overlaps. So thank you. And I look forward to any questions right now or a discussion later on.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's go for, we have some, maybe some questions. Anyone?
Hello, maybe not much of a question, but I recently read about the new iPhone 13, where there's debate around the fact that you cannot repair the iPhone without losing its ID face functionality. So I think that sort of raises the question of how the giants are, or how serious they are about this repairability of electronics. I wonder if you have any thoughts or if you've heard of this discussion at all.
That is a great question. It is very true. We're hearing this cognitive, to me, it's like this cognitive dissonance where you're hearing Apple say, no, we're really trying, we're really caring, we even made some iPhones that have replaceable batteries, but then when you actually look into it, their phones are increasingly glued in, and just trying to open them really increases the risk of them breaking. So my perspective is that for the Apples and the Samsungs, it's always going to be more profitable to buy a new phone than to sell you a new phone than to sell you a screen or a replacement battery, right? So I do feel like the economic incentive is really strong to not move into this repair scene. So from my point of view, in order to get them to make more durable, repairable designs, you really just need to regulate. But I am curious, and I like to quickly introduce Jessica Richer, who is an expert of this, and I'm sure, Jessica, you have some insights, maybe putting you on the spot.
I might weigh in that another question, I guess, with repair services is who gets to provide the repair services is really central to this this question of right to repair. So Apple is saying, oh, if you want to repair your things, the best place to repair them is at Apple. But they, as Mariana says, don't repair everything, that they might choose to instead say, this is beyond what we offer repair services, but we will count this towards a new phone, and they might take your phone and refurbish it in their refurbishing, but it's really about then an Apple system, and they think that delivers the highest quality. And the counter argument to that is this right to repair, that people should be able to repair their own phones, or that they should have choice in where they take them, like we do with the automobiles. So that is the central question with this right to repair. So yeah, I think that you can get things repaired at Apple, and that they say it is repairable by Apple. So that's what they say. You do have a right to repair with Apple. That right resides with Apple. So that's really the crux of this right to repair question there.
Thank you for that. We have one question before the break. Kevin.
Hi, not as much of a question either, but thanks for the very interesting presentation, Mariana. And I just want to confirm that, yes, it very much resonates with what we do at Nudie, even though in a different business context, which I will get to later. So just wanted to say that since you brought it up.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Kevin.
But okay, thank you all. Let's have a short break a couple of minutes. See you at 11 sharp again, okay? Grab a cup of coffee.
Thanks, see you soon.
So we are back, and Réka probably you want to show some slides?
Yes, and I think I'm enabled to share.
Enabled. Excellent. So let's yeah, let's go. We're eager to hear.
Right. Do you see the first introduction slide now? Great. Okay. So I hope you had time to get some refreshment for this second hour. And yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very happy to continue along these themes of yeah, sustainability and consumption. And now I would like to present on maybe a little bit of a niche example of how retailers in the fashion context reply or respond to some of the changes and shifts that we heard about. So my presentation is under the title Garment Care Offerings and Valuing Our Clothes. And yes, I'm a PhD candidate at the Department of Service Management and Service Studies here at Lund University. And regarding garment care that these care offerings build on, that I will talk about shortly. So when I started my PhD, I was thinking about how to narrow my focus in fashion and sustainability. And some of these images very early on came to my attention about the interesting reduction of clothing utilization. So how much wear our clothes actually get over the past 15 years, while clothing sale has increased. But also the Mistra Future Fashion Research Project just published their final report when I started my PhD, and there they talked about how we need to extend the lifetime of each garments and double it. And then I also started looking at the Swedish fashion market and saw that some of the retailers started to talk about the use phase and how consumers use their garments within their circularity transition. So I think, this is a very interesting moment, of course, because, well, if we take the historical perspective, we know that during World War II, rationing was part of everyday life in the garment industry as well. But upon that, we entered a different era where we were taught more to consume, that if we buy a washing machine, then another person can also buy a washing machine. And this sort of escalated to a point where we're not so used to hearing from fashion retailers to take care of what you have and keep what you have for longer. So I think when we see these different garment care offerings, we need to look into how they are made part of the fashion market, how they are put on the market, and whether there are any conflicting logics or values. And yeah, this is the overarching question that I'm trying to investigate in my PhD project, is this: how the knowledge regarding shortened garment lifetimes and need for garment lifetime extension through consumers' caring practices made part of the fashion market. But the paper I'm presenting on today is one aspect of this, of how our garments, our clothing items made into objects of care, so something that requires and worth caring for. And as I said, retailers try to address garment lifetime extension and this issue of shortened product lifetime by launching different products and services that try to assist consumers to take care of their garments better. But we also know that there are challenges that I was hinting on before, such as consumers need to adapt new skills, meanings, and also materials and practices overall to adapt these caring habits. And often we can also see that, for instance, if retailers try to talk a lot more about keeping what we have for longer, are there any conflicting logics between sustainability, work, and the other sort of more classical sense, the role of the retailers? So yes, in order to make these garment care offerings something that seamlessly fit into the fashion market, there's different work and that's required to do so. And that work I approach as a qualification process coming from market studies and economic sociology, where different actors, such as companies, through their marketing, attach different qualities, constellation of characteristics to their products and services to put them on the market. So in this paper, I look at and try to illustrate and conceptualize how our garments made into objects of care through this qualification work. So the marketing behind these garment care offerings, what sort of qualities do they talk about? And yes, I followed these objects, which I call garment care offerings, throughout the Swedish fashion retail market. So first I looked at the 25 largest fashion retailers, but then I narrowed my focus to 3 retailers. Here I call them a retailer ABC. And this follow the object principle took me through their stores, their online shops, social media, but also different videos or events and even description related to moments and instances when they talk about the importance of caring for what we have, or they offer different product services or knowledge. So I developed this typology of garment care offerings based on 4 aspects. So what shapes and forms these offerings take. So are they more traditional products, services, or perhaps online guides? Then I focused on where they appear. Where do I come across them? Are they in store, attached to the garments, such as like printed on the pockets, for instance? or are they more available through the website or the web store or social media? Then thirdly, another characteristics of these garment care offerings which differentiates them from each other is what sort of exchanges do they involve? So are they add-on benefits when you buy one of the garments from the retailers? Are they complementary? Or perhaps you can purchase it as a consumer later on against the payment, of course. Or perhaps it's openly accessible for anyone. Mostly this would appear on the website, for instance. And lastly, which is very interesting and perhaps connects to this life cycle of garments, these offerings carry many different value propositions, as in what sort of garment care they talk about or offer. And maybe first we think of the value recovering aspect. When something breaks, they try to repair them, mending services, for instance, but they also have different value preserving qualities as well, or characteristics, such as different guides or tools to store and keep the garments properly in your wardrobe to avoid any damage to occur at the first place. And lastly, they also have these different value adding characteristics. So when consumers get tired of the garments, that they perhaps offer some sort of techniques, skills, or products like iron-on patches to refresh the items. So this is a typology that by following the instances when retailers talk about garment care, I developed of this just a mapping of what sort of offerings we can see on the market. But to go back to this qualification process, and I wanted to use this angle of qualification to understand better of maybe how can we see these care offerings talking about longevity integrated in retailers' normal operations and retail settings. So the qualification is usually about making the goods, so the product or service, into something that is ready for exchange. So adding different qualities to them that make them relevant and justified to be on that retail setting. And these qualities that the garment care offerings carry and market themselves are firstly often connected to positioning them as sustainability proxies. So through these garment care offerings, the consumers are afforded or given the capabilities to carry out different care practices that in return also contribute to fashion sustainability by extending the lifetime of the garments. Then secondly, as I said, consumers often have to learn new skills and techniques to conduct garment care. So these garment care offerings are also added these qualities or characteristics that address this lack of skills perhaps that consumers have. So they are positioned as technique enablers. And here I also included under the 3 themes that I identified some quotes that you can see on the slightly text-heavy slides. But with the red, I highlighted the qualities that answer to these, so based on which I identified these themes. Sorry, I should have said that first. And now moving on to the third purpose or technique, third role or quality that these garment care offerings have is that they are positioned as emotional durability tools, because we also know that often one of the barriers for a longer lifespan for a garment item is that consumers just simply get tired of owning and wearing that clothing. So they also try to address this aspect of how to refresh or add new values to the garment that would help consumers to reconnect more again with the garment. So yes, when I looked at the marketing and how these garment care offerings are presented, there were these qualities that very much emerged in the material, directly speaking about the offering itself. So they are there to help you season after season, speaking of some sort of longevity, sustainability. They are designed uniquely to help. They are solutions to certain troubles. And when you're not ready to let go of something, they are there to, again, provide a solution. But going back to these quotes again, I also noticed a second level of qualification where these garment care offerings not only market themselves, but they also speak of and add a next layer of quality to the garments that they are attached to eventually in our consumption practices. So with red, you can see the qualities that speak of the garment care offerings as good, but also with blue, I highlighted the different qualities and maybe set of values that they try to attach to the garments and the clothing that we own. So here we can see sort of a value transformation that these garment care offerings need to conduct as a work on the market in order to perhaps help these care routines and practices to take more space. So they talk of garments as something that requires luxury treatment. They have timeless styles and pristine conditions. They are positioned, the garments, I mean, by their favorite items, trusty old friends, and some things that are worth decorating until you are happy with the result. So based on these, I did a second round of analysis where I focused more on the second role of garment care offerings that are in work to highlight the value of garments and make them worthy of care. So these garment care offerings attach this next level of qualities that contribute to the valuations on the fashion market, and they position garments as object of love, object of craft, and garments as investment pieces. So these are the three value sets that we can, or qualities that we can see in the next stage, how the garment care offerings are made part of the market, rationalized, and they create a need for themselves by also transforming the understanding we have of garments. So just going very shortly through these three functions or values that are added to the garments. Object of love. Many times how the garment care offerings are launched on the fashion markets position and speak of garments as life companions. They sit on us as second skins, follow us in our journey throughout life, and therefore they require and deserve care. This is sort of the second step interpretation that many times these garment care offerings make. Then secondly, they also positioned as object of craft. So they allow consumers to look at garments as not closed entities, but something that is open and allows consumers to add on their own understanding, so appropriate the garments even more and perform some creative techniques as a free time activity, even when perhaps they get bored of a jumper and maybe it has very distinct buttons. Then these garment care offerings offer maybe a package of new buttons that come with an instruction of how to change the buttons on that jumper and give it a new life. And lastly, they also position garments as investment pieces, because we know that conducting care comes, and as the previous presentation also talked about, that it requires investment. Here, what I can see in this set of material, that in order to get consumers to perform care and care practices on the garments also need to be understood as investment pieces that are worth the time and effort and money put into perhaps repairing them, but also washing them properly, and yeah, just all the extra work that comes with paying attention to these. So this last third set of qualification or value that garments receive as investment pieces often builds on also buying less but buying better, connecting to some of Carys's example. And just to round up my presentation, some of the implications of these findings on how garment care offerings make part of the fashion market and how they transform the values of clothing. I think it's very important to keep in mind that in some of the cases, we can, of course, still see fast production trying to be coupled with slow consumption. And it's important that in those cases, we don't forget that these garment care offerings, how they are put on the market and maybe qualified is just the groundwork and the first step, perhaps to creating this new understanding of that even old garments are worth the time and effort to work with. And then if we have these understandings, then maybe these offerings can be scaled up more and put into a central position in more retailing models. And secondly, regarding responsibilities, I think often when we see that the retailers address consumers to take better care of the garments to extend the lifetime, it's also important to remember that, of course, quality depends often on production. So the care we perform on garments is just one aspect of lifetime. And to conclude, overall, these garment care offerings are there to make them and start to make a market for themselves. And they need to add a new and set of value to garments that sort of highlight garments that are worthy of care as opposed to objects of throwaway society. And when we look at how can care offerings be made central in more cases instead of being compartmentalized, the understanding that the qualification work is the first step that helps consumers as well to adapt these different offerings, use them. And that often lies in how these garment care offerings are put on the market and marketed. So it somehow becomes an interplay between the efforts from the consumers, but also the retailers to help these care offerings to be scaled and adopted and used by their consumers. And I don't know if we have any time for questions, but maybe at the end there will be some discussions related to garment care as well. But thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I have room for one question. Do we have? We can save it to later.
One quick question then from me, Réka, do you have plans in researching this idea from the consumer perspective then, rather than from the retailers?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, I'm very much looking forward to seeing consumers using to see how they make sense and understand these care offerings, how easy perhaps it is to integrate it with current consumption practices. But that's coming next year. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Next speaker is Kevin. Are you ready to share some slides?
Yes, Daniel, I'm ready. Thanks.
Go for it.
Here we go. Screen visible?
Looking good.
Awesome. Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation to this seminar. Great presentations. I'm gonna just deliver a brief presentation on the Nudie Jeans sustainability practice, some of them more with the circularity focus. So very much connected to the previous presentations. And I'll just shoot off with introduction of the brand itself. Myself work as sustainability coordinator in the head office, just to say that as well. But the brand was founded in Gothenburg in 2001 by a woman called Maria Eriksson-Levin. Together with her, she had a partner, Palle Stenberg, and Joachim Levin, our CEO. And the company is yet privately owned by these three today. You could say that Maria was like the creative core behind the brand. She had lots of experience from the denim industry before working as head designer at Nudie Jeans Europe, right before. So the like setup and her engagement in sustainability and experience of lack of social corporate responsibility within the supply chain was also major drives for establishing Nudie Jeans, and yeah, like the vision of having a brand producing high quality garments made in a fair way. The private ownership, you could also say, has had a crucial impact on like the possibility to actually invest in certain sustainability procurements and move forward in that kind of direction, due to like the mentality being very much integrated in the DNA of the brand. We have the head office in Gothenburg with over 80 employees today, and it covers all aspects of the business, all the way from design to distribution and everything in between. And today you can find Nudie Jeans garments in over 35 repair shops, which are our own retail shops, in our online shop, and in more than 1,000 multi-brand retailer doors worldwide. And yeah, one of the sustainability procurements we've been most known for was the transition to 100% organic cotton in all of the denim pieces in 2012. That was a decision which was taken in 2006 together with our suppliers and cotton farmers. So it took 6 years to reach 100% organic cotton with all of the denim pieces, but in 2017 we also covered the small gap, which wasn't denim, so in all cotton styles, basically. This is a slide from our latest sustainability reports with some examples of different sustainability engagement initiatives. Last year, to mention a few, we increased our product transparency in the web shop. We've had a production guide which still is available today, where you can get like a more detailed overview of where our garments are produced, by whom, and yeah, have some insights in social auditing reports and stuff like that. But now directly on the product card, you can have a full supply chain overview for each garment. We become GOT certified, which means that we can produce a fully GOT certified end product, but all of the steps within the supply chain needs to fulfill the requirements in the GOT standard. So today we have a few GOT certified, or yeah, some GOT certified styles on the web shop. But you can have a closer look at this in the sustainability report if you would like to know more. It's all available online under the sustainability tab. To give you a clear picture of our physical spread, you have the orange dots here, which represents our repair shops. So yeah, I mentioned them briefly before, but our own retail concept is a repair shop concept where we actually offer free repairs for all Nudie Jeans. Around 85% of everything we sell is jeans, so it's very much our like core product. So this service covers like, yeah, the majority of the product segment, but in cases where we have the possibility to repair other product categories, we do so as well. It's just not like an official part of the offer, but this is something we're looking into, of course, and yeah, probably future developments of that service. So yeah, this is the physical spread. We also have repair partners since 2018 to like expand the reach with this service, which are selected wholesale businesses, which we work with, which have been provided with the same kind of tools we have in our own repair shop to provide the same kind of service. And yeah, so free repairs, and also take part in the reuse trade-in program, which I will mention a little bit more soon. And the white dots are production sites in tier 1, so assembly and manufacturing of the actual garments, although we have, of course, the knowledge of the other tiers as well, but just to keep the map quite simple. And in our case, just as for any business, I guess, is sustainability is very much about like taking responsibility in every step of the value chain. And for us, it all begins with the cotton fiber in most cases. We need to apply this mentality or like practices in all of the steps, of course, like denim manufacturing or any fabric manufacturing of the garments to have this high quality product made in fair way to then later be broken in, repaired when necessary, reused, and eventually also recycled where we interact with the consumer. So the circle to the right is supposed to represent the consumer face. And we have this setup in place, but what we not struggle with, but aim for is to like expand, scale up these business practices to gain a higher level of circularity. And as mentioned, it all begins with the fiber. And just to show you that we have our own Nudie Jeans sustainable material tool, which is based on the standards IIIEE Material Sustainability Index and an old benchmark by the organization made by. So it's not like completely arbitrary or anything like that. Very much, yeah, in line with industry standards. And you can see here we have a sustainable fiber box, which contains 3 different classes of sustainable fibers. And you have the definitions right here down in the left corner. So scope 1 is recycled, recyclable, reused, and biodegradable materials. Scope 2, recyclable but not biodegradable, certified virgin materials, responsible wool standard or GOTS certified wool, and in scope 3, responsible wool standard GOTS certified animal hair and fibers. For leather, in those cases, certified organic animal husbandry and vegetable tanning processes, which today is very hard to get by since there's a very great lack of traceability and integration between the food industry and textile industry. So for Nudie Jeans garment to be classified as a sustainable one, it must contain at least 70% of any of the sustainable fiber classes. So you can still use the non-sustainable fibers, but only 30% of it, which we rarely do. And we actually took a decision last week to increase that limit. So from the collections being released in 2023, the limits will be 80-20. So sustainable garment must contain at least 80% sustainable fibers. So this is very much a tool for our designers and product developers when designing new products and guide them, so to say. It's not, we have to look at this each day. These like practices are very much integrated in their processes, but good to have a framework for it. Just some basic pros and cons of conventional contra organic cotton. You've probably heard it before, but since it's being our biggest fiber, around 94% of everything we use is virgin organic cotton. So why it matters so significantly is due to chemical usage. I mean, producing 1 kilogram of conventional cotton also requires around 1 kilo of hazardous chemicals, such as artificial fertilizers and pesticides, which are toxic for the people working on the field, resulting in soil getting impoverished and not suitable for growing any other crops such as food and so on. Then it's very much like a short-term profit perspective in that sort of sense, where you can get, in most cases, maybe a bit larger harvests, but you also need these chemical pesticides and fertilizers to produce it, and you risk ecosystem collapse and workers falling ill. I guess this is pretty obvious reasons to not source conventional cotton, but some of the it's still like a very small percentage of the world's global cotton production, which is organic. I think it's around 2% if you look into Textile Exchange's organic cotton market report. But 2019 was a record year, and so it is like slowly increasing. But we think that brands need to, like bigger brands, fast fashion players need to have take a bigger responsibility here and like interact, work together with the farmers, pay in advance to like, yeah, establish some sort of financial security for the farmers, because it also takes around 3 years for a conventional cotton field to actually, to convert it to fully organic methods. And some of the main criticism that organic cotton practices gets is whether it's possible for it to actually satisfy the global demand of the fiber. But we think that's a pretty like twisted way to see it, since it's the extreme demand of the fiber which should be like taken care of. And here like circular business practice and models where we actually also take control of the textile waste streams and put them back into the production chain again has like the potential of together with organic cotton satisfy that demand with moving away from conventional cotton farming methods. So that's just brief about some of our sustainability practices when it comes to environmental ones, sourcing fibers, using materials. But of course, we think it's crucially important to understand our full supply chain, but in terms of like social sustainability, ethics, and that sort of thing too, to be able to adapt and improve ourselves, but also to communicate and to send this message to the consumers, to educate them, to provide them with information about the real value of the garment. Although we understand and we have seen in lots of research that information and education, like theoretically, doesn't have the potential on its own to actually fundamentally change consumer behaviors and adapt to slower consumption patterns. But we still think it's a key ingredient in the recipe for slower consumption patterns. Yeah. Which brings me into like the consumer phase, the product phase for us. And what you see in this picture is our core product, the dry jeans, which is the pair to the left here. So we often say that it all starts with a pair of dries, and when you wear a pair of dries, when along, some magic will come your way. And it's pretty great. Like, and I also think that like Nudie Jeans being seen as a pioneer in circularity and sustainability within the textile industry very much derives from this type of product, because the property of the raw denim fabric and how it ages, how it like becomes, as Réka said before, like the second skin. Once you've worn it a long time, it also builds some affection and like the long-lasting relationship to the garment. So it's all very much incorporated into this piece. But of course, we need to adapt and apply this sort of mentality to all product categories, but just very symbolic picture. So this one never worn, this one worn for 11 months, never washed, and after one wash, slight difference there. Yes. So for us, we see lots of stuff happening now on like the circularity scene on EU level as well, with the extended producer responsibility, new policies being worked out, coming into place. But we have actually adapted to these kinds of setups long before, and the repair shop concept just like it grew quite organically forward since we actually opened up our first shop. Before it was called repair shop, we only had like hemming machines in the stores, and some staff started to repair their own jeans with these hemming machines, and eventually some sort of idea was set into place, and in 2013 it was officially launched. So since 2013 we have kept count on every repair that we do. We have seen great increase in the numbers and the engagement from our users. So, but in 2020 was actually the first year where we saw a decrease due to lockdowns and all that stuff. So, but still 45,900 repairs during 2020 on a global scale. In 2019, which was a record year for us, we repaired 63,300 pairs of jeans, I think. Yeah, so very incentivized, beneficial for the consumers. They don't pay anything for it. I mean, it's integrated in the price, you could say, but we market it as a free repair service, and that's also how it is perceived and used by the consumers. Those numbers that I just showed you, just to have some fun illustrations, each pair folded twice would actually make a pile higher than the Burj Khalifa building. Yeah, pretty cool. And put into other numbers, those 45,900 pairs also mean that we saved 36,267 kilos of textiles, an amount that would require 321,324 tons of water in new production, just to put it in another context. So we do repairs, as mentioned, but we also have a reuse concept, which I mentioned briefly, where because the consumers can repair their jeans an infinite amount of times, no matter where they are bought, when or by whom. But when they don't want their jeans any longer, they can turn it into us. This is yet today only available in our physical repair shops or at the repair partners. We aim at adapting to a digitalized retail system as well, but so the consumers get a 20% discount of new pair. And in 2020 we collected 9,218 pairs of pre-loved jeans, also a slight decrease compared to 2019, as you can see there, where we collected 11,500 pairs. Yes, so these jeans we repair if necessary, or if just in a good condition, we resell them directly in the repair shops. So these selections are curated by the sales staff. And since 2018, we also do reuse online drops. So a bit more premium, carefully selected Nudie Jeans offered online 4 or 5 times a year, operated from HQ. So these are jeans that have been sent back to the warehouse and picked out by our reuse coordinator, who makes those drops. And in 2020 we sold 2,338 pairs of reused jeans, so secondhand jeans, in all channels combined. Also a slight decrease compared to 19, by 1,200. But all of the jeans that we collect, we don't resell. Some of them are, I think it's a 33%, a third part division between the different streams. So some of them get sold, some of them get directly cut into repair patches for their free repair service. But we also have some rests, which are stocked and shipped back to our main warehouse to be used in different upcycle or recycle projects. So these are some examples of products that we have produced over the years, thanks to the interactiveness with the consumers and the circular business, circular consumption behavior. So these are examples of upcycle products where we have taken post-consumer Nudie Jeans material without degrading it on fiber level and made some accessories of them. This is an old project where we made rag rugs back in 2014. Also some sort of upcycle where old fabric was used for making these rug rags by striping them up and weaving them together into this product. So no fiber degradation, just using the material in its current state as well. Another example was the Rebirth capsule, which it's called, released in winter 2019. And I think this is one of my personal favorite because what you got to the right here is also an LCA study from the fabric supplier, Bossa in Turkey. So I think the beauty of this is that we have managed to mechanically recycle both rigid and stretch materials. The stretch materials only contain maximum 2% of elastane. But yeah, mechanically collected through the Nudie Jeans repair shops, 5,000 to 6,000 pieces sent down to our fabric supplier Bossa in Turkey, degraded on fiber level, and then used in the production of new fabric blended up with 80% virgin organic cotton. So great example of a product we could produce when interacting with the consumers, and also a great story, I think, to share with the consumers when they hand in their jeans that, okay, we take care of this now. These fibers might potentially actually be in a new product on this shelf in a few years. And Rebirth pretty much represents the name there. The most recent project we have was this Ture blanket, recycled blanket. And the beauty about this, and what I want to say with this, is that we also need to adapt to like regional circularity practices, because this one is only produced with recycled wool. I think it's some polyamide, but also 20% recycled post-consumer Nudie Jeans, only collected in our Australian repair shops. So these jeans haven't been collected in Australia and shipped back to Sweden to then be shipped to fabric supplier for degradation. This was a collaboration with Waverley Mill, which is a wool mill in Tasmania. So this is also just to symbolize like how we need to structure our circular flows and curate them moving forward, according to like planetary boundaries and all. So yeah, a few examples, just a more detailed picture of our value chain. And it's, of course, the recycle, reuse, repair, break-in part we've gone through here now, but I think what I want to say with this picture is just that we need to interact with all different stakeholders to scale up and develop these practices in that product and user face segment. And this is what we're looking into for the future, to scale up the repair service, make it more accessible to like online users, open up more repair shops, accept all product categories within the take back scheme, build the proper infrastructure to take control of all of the post-consumer flows and have an accurate curation of these flows according to the waste hierarchy. And we have the main responsibility, of course, but the collaboration is key. So I think that was about what I had to say. But if you have any questions later on, you can contact me personally or just type an email to sustainability@nudiejeans.com. Yeah, thanks. Is it possible for me to stop sharing? Yeah.
Excellent, really nice, fantastic. All the speakers, thank you a lot. Do we have some comments or questions to Kevin before we move into the panel discussion? I don't see any hands waving, so let's go into the panel discussion. Here, Carys, you are I'll leave it to you, basically.
Yeah, thank you so much, Daniel. I'm hoping that we can have a really good discussion here with everybody, including the audience or the non-speakers. I'd like you to be part of this as well. So please raise hands if you have comments on what people say, or if you have specific questions that you want to raise also. But I thought that maybe I would get started with posing a question here to all the speakers so far. And that is about who we assign responsibility to for sustainability when it comes to consumption. So I think, Réka, you kind of brought up this idea of responsibility. And I wonder, from your various perspectives, do we overemphasize perhaps the consumer's role or the retailer's role here in securing our future? Should we be assigning more responsibility to governments, or how do you see that balance?
Yeah, maybe I can start answering something to this question. I think, yeah, it was really interesting today to listen to the different presentation and hear how perhaps these new motivations emerge from a niche, but what happens to barriers when that niche becomes maybe a little bit more mainstream and there's no supporting infrastructure perhaps to go along with those emerging motifs. But then also what I try to talk about a little bit in my presentation, in how these care offerings, in order to be adapted by the consumers as well, it of course requires a very thorough work from the retailers to sort of make it adaptable by the consumers as well, even though if they have the motivations, they need the supporting skills, etc. So that's one way to look at that responsibility, that somehow it needs to merge in the middle. But then at the same time, we also have this discussion about the notion of responsibilization, when perhaps global challenges through many of the policy documents, but also in industry, gets very much boiled down to how the individual can and should contribute, which is of course also the case, but then it becomes the question of how maybe the responsibility is shared or distributed within this network of actors who act together. So I think it has to be somewhere shared, and yeah, we cannot forget that part. But I'm very curious if others would like to jump on in this one.
Please do.
I can, yeah, possibly say a few things, like how we approach it, and also my personal opinion, just because I often talk about this with like different students in interviews and so on, and often come back to like responsibility placed in relation to the amount of capacity, which is like in each like decision-making process. I mean, as individual consumers, we only have our own voice and our own choice, and there's a great potential in consumer power if organized, of course. But we feel that the major responsibility lies within like the policymakers, institutions, and the brands themselves, where decisions are taken in groups. So yeah, just basic approach, I guess, to that.
I actually side with Kevin on this. I think when it comes to consumption, yes, everyone needs to be involved. You cannot just say it's not my responsibility. Everyone has the responsibility, but I think policymakers have the biggest influence because they're setting up the structures and the right incentives and the legal frameworks, and we're seeing it right now. And I think right now the problem that I've identified is that the government is focused much on, yes, consumption, let's make production better, and they're ignoring a very important piece, which is we also need to change the normal. We need to think how to mainstream norms. And I think the government has big capacity, it's a huge opportunity to drive this change. And then, yes, it's the responsibility of businesses and having, working together with other groups of society. But at the end of the day, I think that the governments can do a lot of driving, more so in a society like.
Thanks. Does someone else want to add anything on that topic? Jessica, you were nodding furiously.
I'm nodding because I'm always in support of policy changes. I feel like policy sets the rules, by which we play to a certain extent. And I mean, as consumers, we're also citizens, so we help with that setting of the rules. So I think that's also the part that, yes, we can buy and we can be consumers, but we can also be citizens and voicing how we want those rules to be set.
Yeah, good point. And I think there's often, there's very many tensions here for all parties, right? Government has to perhaps put in place unpopular policies, but also think about re-election. Consumers have this kind of, we're conditioned to think about our own self-interest, to buy what we want, and the invisible hand of the market will take care of the rest. But somehow we're also now trying to be incentivized to care, this idea of care. And then you have retailers who of course have some tension here between profit and doing the right thing, and this you know, this tension between extending the life of products and selling new. So I guess that makes things really, really complex. Any comments? Anyone else have comments on that?
I could just bump in and say, I mean, like long-term perspective, we need to have like the long-term perspective in relation to making profit and yeah, slowing down consumption behaviors. I mean, it's we often get the question whether we see it being profitable having this free repair service, but I mean, it gains lots of brand value and yeah, loyal customers, like coming back, even though they don't purchase like a new pair of jeans. I mean, they come to our shops for other reasons to make the repairs and so on. So and I guess that's also very much related to like, yeah, long-term perspective and market shares, I guess. I mean, in that sort of sense. So like maybe a bigger volumes of users instead of a super high volume of produced products.
Yeah, and that makes me think about actually something you said there, whether you think is it more effective, should we say, to emphasize the kind of individual self-interest in this, or is it more effective to emphasize this kind of care for others? How does that, I mean, I don't know if any of you have input on that. What's more effective there? Are we selling this as this is good for you, or are we selling this as this is good for the planet and everybody?
I think we need to bridge those two. You know, there's Daniel Miller who writes this ethnography about, you know, shopping, and I love how he places it. He says, you know, people try to find, you know, shopping sometimes is framed as conspicuous, but when you actually start to follow people, everyday shopping is about saving. And then what you see is that people come home and they're very proud because they went to the supermarket and they saved, or, you know, and because then he goes on to explain, he thinks this is because we value thrifts. You're taking care of the resources of the home. Then when you go to the supermarket and you have an organic product and a non-organic product, if you buy the organic product to care for the environment, then you're not caring for your home anymore, because then you spend more money, you didn't save your resources. I feel like the catch there is, how do we bring those together? How do we equate individual benefits with social benefits? And I think that's the question that policymakers and businesses need to start bridging. It shouldn't be one or the other, because it puts the individual in a very tough position. And then we talk about attitude behavior gap, and I'm like, it's not attitude behavior gap. People are being consistent. They're being caring and taking care of their families. So I don't know if they don't care. So I think, yeah, that's what I think.
Good point. Anyone else?
Yeah, go ahead, Réka.
You
Go
can
ahead.
go.
No.
Yeah,
go ahead.
okay. Just very shortly, I think responsibility taking and being attributed and acting upon those responsibility sort of correlates very well with practicing care, and care for, in my case, very verbatim for the garment, but that has implications for, like, you care for the planet and you care about these challenges. So I think there's a bit of a parallel there as well.
Yeah, I just want to say that I totally agree both of you, Réka and Mariana as well. And like, I didn't mention that, but holistically taking on that challenge, like whether it's a policymaker or a brand, I mean, I think it's crucial to underline that. I mean, within like the textile industry, sometimes you get so frustrated, like looking at sustainability marketing and communication, because lots of it is like rubbish. So you get a bit frustrated sometimes, and I think it's crucial to actually pinpoint that holistic approach. Like, we are doing this like for ourselves and everyone else involved, like on all different levels, and not like miss any detail in that communication piece. And I guess that's got a lot to do with education, of course, but as Mariana touched upon too, like to actually enable like the fundamental behavioral change we need. It's not just information and education, we need policy change.
Daniel, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I have a question directed to you, Kevin, since you're here representing a brand and a retailer. So what challenge are you facing today, and what is your next initiative for being more sustainable? What is the breaking news that you will
That's a big one. I mean, today we only touched upon a few things, but there's so much like to dig into. And I mean, I think we have a pretty good understanding of where we're at and what our most significant and sustainability aspects are. And of course, like, we need to take a firmer grip, or we have so, but like continue to engage in like the climate initiatives. We recently started to, like a few years ago, started to map all of our emissions according to the greenhouse gas protocol. I mean, this is pretty much default today, but to also engage with the supply chain where we have not as much of a resourcefulness to have direct impact. But so that's absolutely a top topic. When it comes to like ethical or social sustainability, I guess the main debate is still regarding living wages. I mean, we have two suppliers in India, which we've worked with for a long time and have had successful results with our living wage programs, but to also continue the mapping in the different supplier countries in Europe to make sure we do what we can. But that's also a matter of policy, and the kind of method we are working on here is more like, to have like a quick fix where we can, but also to like showcase the problematics, of course, and to drive the agenda. And as mentioned, like briefly in the presentation as well, I mean, in regards to circularity, like properly build a circular infrastructure for our garments. And I mean, we talk about like our own garments first, but it's possible that we will also build capacity for taking care of other things as well. And that's could be a typical Nudie Jeans dilemma, I'd say, that we are a bit too keen on making things our own way and like doing stuff ourselves. But I think here we need to be very humble about our position, and also like investigate the necessities of outsourcing some services and new collaborators.
Thank you.
And thanks for your question, Daniel. I guess we maybe pretty soon have to wrap up. A little bit over time officially, but does anyone from the audience want to pose a last question or have a last comment? Then I'll ask perhaps just for a last word from all the presenters so far. Is there anything you want to finish up with, something to take away from today? No pressure.
I have a question for Kevin, if that's okay.
course.
Kevin, I wonder how Nudie Jeans, if at all, is discussing the issue of growth. You know, how much do you want to grow? When is it enough? Is it forever? Is it?
That's like the most that's the big elephant in the room. Like, no, but that's the one of the most relevant questions, and that's absolutely something which is being discussed. And I don't think I have like a fixed answer for it, but I think as long as we see, I wish our CEO was here now, but I could ask him and send you the answer afterwards. No, but he often talks about, like, you know, this 3 mile a day thing, you know, like slowly moving forward, but with like a steady pace. And I mean, this is like very abstract. I mean, our goal is to be like the most sustainable denim brand, or just a sustainable denim brand, if we actually have like clear indications of what that means. So I guess that I don't think there is a fixed answer to that one yet, but obviously we're aware of that we won't be able to grow as much, like just
Forever, yeah.
infinite amount. Of course, there are limits, and yeah. But yeah, please, I can ask him and see what he has to say about it.
That would be great. But thank you. I think it's amazing that you're having that conversation, and it already puts you far ahead than many other, from my point of view.
Thanks for the question.
Any other final words from any of the speakers? No? Okay, then I guess it just remains for me to say thank you very much. I think we lost Daniel here, so I'll close up and just remind you that if you want to attend any of the other retail-related events we have going on this week for Retail Week, then check out our calendar on our website, and I will put the website address in the chat. And thank you so much to all the presenters. I think this was a really, really informative and interesting morning, well spent. Yeah, thank you, and see you all next time.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good week.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.